Welcome to another Explainer. Today, we're tracing a sweeping cosmic history straight from some incredibly vivid esoteric source materials. We're talking ancient eras, the profound mysteries of human consciousness, and a highly specific cosmic intervention that these texts claim is unfolding literally right now. Let's get right into it. Let's start with this eerie quote from our source text. It warns that the human intellect has grown more and more shadow-like. You see, the author insists that, especially since the 19th century, our modern minds have become totally detached from true spiritual reality. Sure, we've developed an absolutely brilliant capacity for material science, but according to the text, this has left our thinking completely unrooted from the living, spiritual cosmos that surrounds us. So, what does this actually mean for us? What happens when our thinking gets entirely trapped in the purely physical, material realm? Well, the sources argue that while we can easily grasp the mechanics of minerals and machines, the true essence of life, whether it's a plant, an animal, or a human, becomes a total mystery to us. We are at risk of being completely absorbed in the shadowy, gray intellectualism. To grasp the sheer scale of this, we need to map out the cosmic schedule presented in the text. We're tracing humanity's milestones from the ancient Atlantean age through the late 19th century into the present day and all the way to a very fateful deadline in the 8th millennium. Our spiritual evolution, you see, isn't static. It's tied to massive cosmic events, charting a course from the distant past into a pretty dramatic future. And right here we can see a massive shift. Back in the Atlantean era, human souls, sometimes called Mars men and Jupiter men in the texts, were descending from planets to Earth to inhabit physical bodies. But the late 19th century marked something entirely different. It brought the arrival of beings who have actually never been human. It's a radically new phase, introducing a completely different class of cosmic entities into our earthly sphere. Act 1. The Descent into Shadow. According to the source material, our modern condition actually started way back in the 15th century, culminating in the 19th. Over that time, our intellect has become, well, spectral. We've obsessively focused on the material world, becoming completely opaque to the spiritual one. The text points out that by relying entirely on traditions and external sense perceptions, we've basically traded the natural clairvoyance of the ancient world for a rigid, hardened ego that only really understands physical mechanics. The text calls this the shadowy intellect. It's an automatic, lifeless form of thinking capable of understanding only dead mineral material reality. It forces us to live in a reality of dead thought corpses, completely blind to the living forces behind nature. People might feel totally satisfied by neat mathematical and material explanations, but the text warns these thoughts have no true spiritual reality. They're just the empty scaffolding of a much deeper universe, completely unable to grasp true human potential. Act 2. The Cosmic Intervention. Now, this is where things get really fascinating. The spiritual world hasn't just abandoned us to this shadowy intellect. The texts outline a massive cosmic intervention with a highly specific timeline. Beginning in the late 1870s and 1880s, super-earthly Vulcan beings from the sphere between the Moon and Mercury began descending to Earth. They are already among us, pressing forward to gain a foothold. And unlike previous spiritual influxes, these non-human entities actually depend on establishing a relationship with humanity for their own cosmic development. So what's their mission? They're here to help us quicken our dead thoughts into living spiritual imaginations. They want to save the evolved human ego. But here's the catch. They need us to consciously imbue ourselves with their cosmic wisdom. They can't just force it on us. And remarkably, the texts point to a physical, biological connection for this. They describe how Archangel Gabriel prepared a newly developed organ in the human brain, the pituitary gland, to receive these messages, which are now activated by light rays from Archangel Michael. It literally requires our physiological and conscious participation. Act 3. The Mission and the Warning. But this intervention is definitely not a guaranteed success. The source issues a stern warning about how we're reacting right now. We are currently suffering from what the text brilliantly calls cosmic rudeness. Basically, humanity is completely ignoring these arriving spiritual influences. Because we're so stubbornly entrenched in viewing the universe as a giant machine made of dead matter, we're taking absolutely no notice of these advanced guards trying to communicate with us. The texts are incredibly unambiguous about the consequences. If we maintain this opposition, failing to understand their language, which means translating spiritual science into real social action, catastrophe and social chaos await. In fact, if we leave that newly developed pituitary organ unused, the text warns it will degenerate, making humanity susceptible to terrible epidemics and strange nervous diseases. We're looking at increasingly tragic conditions if we refuse to wake up. So, what is the ultimate consequence if humanity continues to reject this cosmic cure? Well, the chaos we're seeing in our current age is apparently just the prelude to a much more permanent and, quite frankly, terrifying physical reality. Act 4, the Eighth Millennium Ultimatum. Everything we've covered so far is really just the setup for a massive, unavoidable cosmic deadline. The texts state that in the 8th millennium, the moon will physically reunite with the Earth's substance. This event forces an absolute binary destiny upon us, based entirely on how we developed our intellect. Will we evolve with the returning moon forces alongside the Vulcan beings, or submit to a totally lifeless automaton existence? For those who persistently refuse the spiritual and stick to dead automatic thinking, the fate described is vivid and deeply disturbing. Their lifeless thoughts will literally be transformed into substantial realities. The texts call this the spider brood destiny. It's a terrifying manifestation of half-mineral, half-plant creatures. Imagine an automaton-like existence with masterly intelligence, but intensely evil intent. Because these people only ever thought about dead mechanical things, those thoughts literally take on physical form. The source describes this as a ghastly brood of half-mineral, half-plant-like creatures, warning that the materialist will have to live together with these spider-like creatures. It's incredibly ironic, right? The materialists who reveled in dead mechanical thoughts will become hopelessly entangled in a physical evolution dominated by those very mechanisms. They'll be bound to an irredeemable mechanical nightmare. Which leaves us to ponder a pretty monumental question. Will humanity quicken its shadowy intellect into living spirit, or become entangled in the web of the future spider brood? Are we using our daily thoughts to build a bridge to a living cosmos, or are we just weaving the first threads of our own mechanical entrapment? The choice is entirely ours.